the first match of the day coming right up, and it is going to be SamuelTsao and che0nsu, and we had a discussion about how you ban and shield this lineup, because it is pretty much a mirror lineup going against each other. It's the Highlander Hunter, the Zoo, the Control Warrior, and the Quest Druid mirrored, and we see both players had the same idea. So shield Druid and ban Warlock, and I was saying to you that this seems odd to me, because the second one of them shields Warlock and the other one shields Druid, I feel like everything's just gone crazy for whoever chose to shield Druid. And this is where, just again, mind games, and you know, were they so confident that their opponents weren't going to shield Warlock? I don't know. I think that's a bit crazy.
It is very, very interesting to me, and I think that you have to be very careful, because this plan that they've gone for, I think, could have gone wrong very easily, but worked out okay for both of them, because they both ended up doing the same thing. Obviously, it ends up equal for both of these players, going with the same pick and ban. But I wonder if for one of these players, if they had gone a little bit next level, like you said, shielded the Warlock, maybe even shielded the Hunter, and gone for a ban on the Warrior perhaps, or the other aggro deck, and tried to just target this Druid, they maybe could have had a better shot at that. And obviously, again, this is best of 3 with 3 decks each, so you don't have to play one of the decks. So targeting Druid, I'm doing quotation marks there, is not necessarily a good strategy to go for.
Verbal quotation marks are great.
Exactly. There were also physical ones, but you can't see them.
I can see them, but that's it.
Just for you.
But, yes, I'm starting to form my opinion, as we just take a look at the lineups that are left, of course. I'm starting to form, like, my opinion on how to do this, and if you bring in 2 aggro decks and 2 decks that aggro, or your aggro decks could be good against, then surely you want to play both of those aggro decks if possible. Yeah. So then you ban, because I think the Druid's good. I'm losing my sound here. The Druid's good. There we go. The Druid's good versus the Warrior. And then I think Warlock's fine versus Warrior. I think Hunter's fine versus Warrior. Yeah. So I think there's never a shield there. But then if you shield an aggro deck and then they have to ban the other aggro deck, then you've got a good matchup versus Warrior. You've got decent matchups versus Druid as well. So I think that would have been the more correct way to do it. But I confess I have not exactly been playing this format 3 weeks in a row now.
Exactly, and it's a little unfortunate that we can't get these players on interview to find out what their decision-making process was. But we're seeing it more and more on Twitter from the European and American GM players, as well as Patra we saw as well here from Asia Pacific, talking about how complicated it is to go through the pick and ban phase. But then it gets even more interesting, because in the other regions, Priest has become more popular, and it feels like already become a meme that players are saying, well, use double shield Priest. That's what the meta is right now, which may be the case in the other regions. Here in Asia Pacific, absolutely that is not the case.
Yeah, as we get into game 1, of course, I've even seen some players tweet along the lines of, you know, oh, GM feels like best of 1 now in certain regions, because both players take a win with the Priest, and then it's whatever the last game is, which, you know what, it's kind of what I was saying earlier. If Priest is so good, do you just shield it every time? You know, and that seems to be the attitude in other regions, but as you said, not here in the Asia Pacific region. We've got SamuelTsao on the top on the Druid, and che0nsu on the bottom on the Druid. Looking good and ready to go.
The lists for both of these players, which does make a difference in terms of the late game scenarios, or scenarios. Slightly heavier build for che0nsu with King Phaeorus there, but I suppose it's actually debatable as to who's got the heavier list. che0nsu has King Phaeorus, so a slightly heavier mid-game pressure. SamuelTsao has Elise the Enlightened, so when it gets through to the ultimate late game, it's very possible that SamuelTsao is able to accrue a higher amount of value total. But of course he has to get there first, which, as we saw yesterday between, I believe, was it Surrender and Blood Trail, that's not always necessarily the case if you're throwing away all your good value cards at the start of the game.
Yes, and for me, if we're talking who's greediest or who's more late game, it's definitely SamuelTsao, because Elise on curve is not good.
Yeah.
And if you are playing Elise, then you have probably drawn almost all of your deck, whereas che0nsu can drop Phaeorus on turn 8. Potentially, and that's just a tempo play as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know. The more I watch Druid and the more I play it, I'm generally leaning more away from like this insane you can just play like 5 King Forest or something, or like 5 Nomis or something silly
Oh,
like
me
that.
too.
I
Yeah.
feel like that is way too much.
Me too.
And if you have to rely on that as a strategy, then you are very weak, especially in a tournament with multi-deck submission. You are very weak to almost any other strategy in Hearthstone apart from someone trying to be as slow as you.
Especially in Asia Pacific, where we have seen, I would argue, a slightly more aggressive metagame than the other regions, where we've got more Hunter, more Zoo. Yeah.
Even Bomb Warriors and stuff, right? Like that is, to me, is a reasonably aggressive deck.
We've obviously got less priests in this region as well, which is one of the worst matchups for Druid, which means that you, I suppose, are allowed to take a slightly greedier Druid build because of that. But overall, I agree. I like the slightly lighter, less aggressive builds.
Yeah, I think it's important to note. It's weird we don't have as many priests.
Very weird.
Because I would not submit this week and think, oh, there's only like 3 priests in the 16 players or something. Like, what? I would be like, there's probably at least 10.
Yeah.
Honestly. So I again, that's why it's surprising me even more that some of these players have gone for these extreme late game Druid decks that have like no game versus priests.
che0nsu, being the player on the coin, does get the advantage that affords you in being able to go for the first Oasis Surger, which, if your opponent can't respond, does obviously give you a pretty discreet advantage. But SamuelTsao, at the very least, should he so desire, can make this play.
And that's fair. SamuelTsao supporting not only his deck, but also his hand is not exactly the most proactive thing in the world. He's not really close to any way to win the game, so I think just evening it up and saying, you know what, at worst, there's a floop version of Surger in hand. But now,
I was wondering if che0nsu would ever consider going for Loti plus Crystal Merchant there, because it still draws a card. It gets the War Druid Loti in play, of course, which can be very useful in this matchup. But I guess the extra mana that comes down because of Nourish is probably worth it.
yes, I agree. With the size of his hand and the fact that obviously Nourish helped with the size of his hand by drawing 3, I think you have to have a very good reason to not play Nourish in this matchup, because the second your opponent doesn't have it, you are miles ahead. I mean, look, 4 cards ahead already, and that Crystal Merchant on the board, although did not draw a card, might do, or it requires an answer, which is fine. Again, I think che0nsu, if this Crystal Merchant soaks some removal, che0nsu's probably just okay with it.
I wonder if therefore we see flooped Oasis Surger for SamuelTsao, because this is something he has to be very cautious about. He has more late game value. We've talked about this with Elise. That could take a long time to get going though, like 10 plus turns away potentially. And so therefore, does he just try and just use the floop now, which is a pretty integral piece of your uber late game value plan? Because there's a couple of discrete benefits for going floop now. If your opponent wants to go Cenarius next turn, you have the punish of Innovate Cenarius in response with your 2 Oasis Surgers on board.
I think you 100% drop here now.
Yeah.
And the reason being for me is floop is not that integral to SamuelTsao's endgame plan all the time. Because if you can get to that endgame and you have Elise, then Elise makes you 2 Nomis. I'm not being funny, but if 2 Nomis don't win you the game, well, you've lost anyway. Yeah, something's gone wrong. Whereas this play, and as you quite rightly said, the Innovate into Cenarius, like that could actually either get SamuelTsao to the late game without dying, or B, win the game before it even matters. And this is an insane play from SamuelTsao if he actually manages it next turn.
che0nsu does, of course, have responses in the form of Nourish. I'll start again. He has responses in the form of Starfall and Swipe to be able to clear off this board for SamuelTsao. But even then, it's not a situation he wants to be in.
Yeah, I feel like in the mirror, because Druid spends a lot of mana responding, then they don't normally develop. So if you just keep developing into your opponent in the mirror, you're gonna. There's gonna be a turn they don't have it, right? And then you just push.
I think there was some very slight consideration for SamuelTsao to not go for these scenarios here, because it's really his last big threat.
Double swipe,
something like that. But I think on consideration, I like his play here, because at the very least, it forces che0nsu to have an answer, which is quite awkwardly shaped, to be perfectly honest. Like, it's double Starfall is pretty much the only perfect clear here.
And that's it, right? And if ever they don't have it, you just win.
Good spot.
I think you just win the game. If they don't have a way to like dramatically affect this board, and they just play stuff, and che0nsu just plays stuff, I think SamuelTsao just wins.
So we could see Swipe and Starfall to take out an Oasis Surger and the Cenarius.
Could it ever be like Loti into
I know what you're thinking.
yeah.
You want to set up for Loti on the board for Starfall Swipe next turn.
Is like Loti trade ever just too crazy?
Yeah.
Okay, well, one Loti's coming down, which I approve of.
This is, by the way, not an instance of order lull. That was a fluke scenario, so he had to go for that one before the Loti, as strange as it looks. And what he does in response, instead of trying to clear the board, is puts up an equally threatening board. Ooh, but with the pickup of a Loti for SamuelTsao, is that enough to just push through the defenses here?
I mean, he can push through no matter what, because double swipe gets him through the taunts. But it's how much
clear up
extra
the rest.
it does.
Yeah. Is that even better than just double swipe though? It's a tough turn for SamuelTsao, and he really wants to protect his current board as vehemently as he possibly can, because this is probably the last big board he's going to get for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
Oasis Surger, Floop, Cenarius, those are the big threats in his deck gone until he hits the late game.
So what's he? He swipes fire. Okay.
This makes sense.
I like it's how far he's going with the attacks.
I wonder as well whether he'll attack with the War Druid Loti in order to get more damage through to face, whilst clearing up the board.
I like the whole.
Leaves it stealth. I like that
he
too.
has swipe.
Yeah.
And also it only had rush, so it couldn't hit face anyway, right?
Could have cleared off like a 4-1
Yeah.
though to try and leave his other minions alive. But I agree. I think I like this. For che0nsu, for SamuelTsao now, he, with very few threats, I think realizes correctly he's going to have to go on the back foot, very likely, from this point onwards. Because I think he can expect either he just wins or che0nsu has the board clear.
Right.
And therefore, in the instance where he doesn't just win, he wants to prepare for that outcome.
Oh, speaking of double swipe.
Yeah.
Oh.
Lovely, yeah. Absolutely lovely.
Which is what, 19 this turn. And clears, I would say effectively clears the board, because you aren't clearing that Loti this turn anyway.
Now SamuelTsao needs to get a little bit scared. At 2 health, this Loti is significantly more squishy. Could just die straight up to a Starfall. But at the same time, is he really trading into a 4-1?
What?
That feels bad.
So you have to go nourish?
That's what I'm looking at right now.
I think he has to.
Like, his entire deck revolves around drawing through to the end. When he's not running King Feoris.
Does he ever like just nourish Ferocious Howl and just be like,
Maybe.
yeah, there you go, I'm drawing my deck. And get the armor helps him not die this turn, of course, which means he can just continue playing the game. Because I think everything else feels a little bit slow.
I suppose this does a similar thing. Unless, of course, he's playing the Hidden Oasis instead of Nourish. But I think that's just too weak to Starfall. That gives the absolute
slow.
perfect Starfall to che0nsu.
He's not dead on 18. And now my problem is, well, next turn he probably has to play Nourish.
Yeah.
And his next turn going to look way worse. Like, I don't, because Starfall this turn plus development, then he can't play Nourish because, well, he might end up doing it. But I feel like this was the safest turn to draw stuff.
I agree.
And SamuelTsao's playing the deck that needs to draw its deck. Oh, that was all I could say. SamuelTsao's Druid needs to draw its deck more than che0nsu's does.
Absolutely.
Because of this Elise.
Yes. Because the
And he's
Elise,
not-
the Elise, Nomi, and the Zephrys as well. Oh no, he's not even playing Zephrys.
No, he's not.
This is a weird Druid deck.
Because now, look, like, there's the Nourish, but he can't affect the board now, whereas if he'd preemptively drawn the cards, maybe he could. Like, yes, you know, we can see in a weird world, he would have different cards, he would have bees, he would have Starfall now, so on, so on, so on. But I just think he did that the wrong way round for me. I think if there's a quiet turn, press Nourish.
Yep.
Like, it's such a sick card. But the one weakness is it does nothing on board, and you take advantage of that by the board being empty from your opponent.
I completely agree. I think he had to draw through to his powerful removal cards to bide his time to get over to the che0nsu. And due to the excellent point you made that, that was the perfect time to get Nourish down because it was such an empty board relative to what it will be. And it was so weak to Starfall. I think for SamuelTsao it was the wrong choice. Especially given that he'd already seen double swipe, so he knew even in the worst case scenario he wasn't dead.
Oh, yeah, exactly. He was never dead that turn.
Yeah.
He was facing down 4 attack and he was on 18 health.
Yeah.
He was never dead.
He'd seen
Not
double
in a million
swipe,
years.
Cenarius, and Floop.
Yep.
All the damage was gone.
I think Druid of the Claw seems alright here.
Yeah, it feels like che0nsu's got his way through most of the threats that SamuelTsao going to put down.
And he's just nearly dead.
Yeah.
And also there's Zephyrus. I didn't catch if Zephyrus was active, but if it's not, it must be soon.
I don't think it was quite yet, no.
Probably getting close though.
He's still got 2 Innovates in the deck, I think, or something like that.
And now... Starfall kills off the Loti. Double pawn, and then what do you actually double taunt
Power
the Wild?
Power the Wild, yeah, okay.
And then double trade into the 4/4s?
Or
'Cause there'll be 2 health.
Starfall swipe, no.
Nah,
Yeah,
it's Power
yeah,
the Wild, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
So I think
swipe
that's
just
the
gives you
turn.
bad trades.
And
At
you can
least,
also Ferocious Howl, right?
yes, he can.
That's not too bad actually.
It's not that
That
bad.
is, considering that it looks very bad,
Yeah.
it's not too bad. But the problem is,
I think
I think he loses.
Yeah, well, with Starfall, I think he definitely does lose. He might just be dead on board. Anyway.
Well, no, he's not dead on board because of Ferocious Howl. Right?
Just, yeah, okay.
Because he Starfalls, he kills everything
Yes.
but the Cenarius and the 2 7 attacks, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be 2 buffed taunts on the board. Yeah, SamuelTsao got there. Does he have time? I think he put the attacks away.
I'm pretty sure he does.
Yeah.
So now, Starfall, attack, 14 damage. GG.
That is going to be game as che0nsu takes it 1-0 over SamuelTsao. And again, SamuelTsao got the right turn there, alive on board, which is all he could have hoped for.
Yeah.
But you've just got to go back and think, if he took the Nourish on the quiet turn and then had answers on the busy turn, maybe this game would have carried on a little bit.
And it really does speak back to what you were talking about the other day, a point I really like of how important those extra 2, 3, 4 cards are in Druid. Because even you can argue that the differences in their deck didn't make that much difference. King Phaeorus wasn't drawn before the game was already over. Right. Zephyrus wasn't active, Elise wasn't active until right at the end. But when you actually get down to it, just the fact that Elise was in hand for the entire game clearly speaks how bad it is in this matchup the majority of the time.
And in the deck, because the problem is, I think it's good in the deck with less endgame or with less Elise sort of extent. It's good enough to beat Warrior. And then what other matchup do you ever need that in?
None.
0.
Yeah.
Look at this Hunter, there's Zoo, there's Priest, there's Elise just stood there like, what do you want me to do? I'm just a 5/5.
Yeah.
I can't help. But anyway, we could talk more about this and the interactions between the lists after this break. We'll be right back.
Legends say powerful treasures are hidden everywhere here in Aldum.
If we hope to defeat Rafam, we'll need as many as we can get. He's already unleashed the ancient plague lords and countless monsters. Keep them distracted, Reno.
Not a problem. This plan is totally gonna work. Ain't that right, Finley?
Yes, I have them right where I want them.
There is an artifact here. The name is...
The Scales of Justice. Oh, it must be really fancy.
only to be used in a time of great peril. Yes, I think this qualifies.
Hey, look, Finley. You've lured one of the Plague Lords.
Take this, fiend.
In the face! Yeah! Hey, guys, get that treasure! We've got a Plague Lord to destroy!
Oh, yes, please, hurry.
Not to worry, Finley! We just push this thing right here.
No, that's a trap. Watch out!
It's all good. I am finally tired.
Gracious me.
What we actually need to do is press this. And there.
A
Fish.
No, it's the scales of justice.
Oh. Ah, who wants to use it first?
Oh, I do! Me! On second thought, maybe give it to Finley?
All you had to do was hold a rope.
Here we go, blaming the tall, ruggedly handsome guy again.
che0nsu versus SamuelTsao is going to continue right now, and I believe SamuelTsao is queuing his Druid once again, and che0nsu is going for that Hunter. We've seen Hunter end up pretty aggressive in some of the matches we've seen this weekend, and I think, again, SamuelTsao's in trouble, and this is one of the issues that I thought about of just shielding Druid in the first place. I think it has some, like, the majority of weak matchups against itself, I guess, in this lineup.
Yeah, Reno Hunter, Highlander Hunter is a deck that's had a lot of discussion amongst the different regions. TJ and Dan have been singing its praises, saying it was the bring this week, with all the priests knocking about it, which has got a good matchup against Decent versus Warrior. And I think with the European casters coming down very negatively on it as well on the other side. And I think I'm somewhere in the middle where I'm not entirely sure how I feel about
Just
it.
Full Goldilocks on this.
Yeah, my Highlander Hunter's just right. But I think how it matches up against Druid is a big factor into how good I think the deck is in the current metagame.
Right.
I think if you can find a build that works very nicely against Druid, I like it a lot. And I think a lot of the players actually have that this week. The kind of new builds that we're seeing from a lot of these players with the Scavenging Hyena and Houndmaster thrown in there as well, I think really finds a little bit of extra early aggression and these kind of minions that Druid struggles to deal with, but really get a lot of early work and damage in against a class that's very vulnerable to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the things Hunter can do well early game cannot be answered by Druid without them realistically dying or completely or drastically delaying their quest, which means both of those things are very good if you're the Hunter player, of course, which che0nsu is in this matchup. But we'll see what happens now, though, because he has got more of a slower opening with the Houndmaster in Subject 9.
Very slow opening.
But, you know, he does have a secret, so it means Mass Contender off the top, looking fantastic. And the Hyenas as well would be great because the Snake Trap just isn't going to be procced in the near future.
And that's part of the reason why I was wondering if he should hold on to the Masked Contender, because obviously a whole lot of secrets knocking about in the Highlander Hunter deck. But I think the reason why I think he's correct to get rid of it is because at the end of the day, it's still only 2 attack, and you really just want higher attack minions against Druid to get the damage rolling as quick as you can.
Small things there, but you see the Innovate first to dodge pressure plate. Did it true from che0nsu?
Didn't
so
even think about that.
You did.
Yeah.
Most people don't in these early turns, but you don't want that merchant to just get insta-sniped for no reason.
And I guess even if it was snipe, you'd still want to innovate after. Like, if you innovate first and it's snipe, you're still happy because you want to not have spent all your mana.
Yeah, you still float your mana anyway, right?
Right, so it's good against snipe as well. So yeah, I like it that way.
Here
Well, that's a top deck.
Here we go. And like I said, Druid just doesn't have answers.
Yeah.
Look at the... Okay, SamuelTsao hand is good, right? In general, but it's a good anti-aggro hand.
His opening was insane.
Yeah, but he can Wrath or he can Bees. It still leaves 2 2/2s up.
If he beeses, though, then he needs to be a little bit careful because then he's running into Snake Trap woes.
Yeah.
Do you just take that?
I don't know. I guess Wrath becomes way better next turn. Like, Wrath is insane next turn.
It's true. This is all very bad.
And this is what I mean. Like, there's nothing that good that Druid can do against Hunters, a few of Hunter's powerful early game turns.
Yes, it's just the problem for me in this matchup is that it's very few early game cards. It's Animal Companion, it's Hyena Alpha.
I think Mass Contender's alright for secrets.
I think Mass Contender's all okay, but the Druid could just very happily not proc secrets. I don't think it's that good early on. I'd throw Zephyrus into that pool as well because obviously it can get you a really strong 3-drop when played on curve. And this kind of a starting hand is very, very nice. You're happy to see this as che0nsu, obviously. The single card in Hyena Alpha makes it insane.
This would be the quickest high main I've ever seen. I am very surprised che0nsu's played Subject 9. This is playing for the future.
The quickest high main? You mean Hellmaster?
Hellmaster.
Right.
Job's done.
Yeah, I guess either way you're very vulnerable to Starfall.
But you're not, right?
Oh, you can leave something on board with 1 health.
If you Hellmaster it.
It's a good point.
And that's why I would have just gone for it, even though it's off curve and annoying. Like, Starfall just wrecks you, and now you can still play Hellmaster into a secret, but suddenly it starts getting a little bit worse.
It really does.
Yeah, I've drawn che0nsu a lot of cards, so the secrets do kind of play havoc with Druid.
Not a bad pickup for che0nsu. And this is, again, the benefit of playing Secret 9. His next top deck was much more likely to be good, which is understandable why he'd go for it. But I agree, if the punish was there, it looks horrendous his play.
Now Wrath going to do a good job of picking this Citron off, if he wants to, of course.
It's really just a ticking time bomb here for che0nsu, where he knows eventually SamuelTsao is going to get to some kind of a dominant board presence. But the problem for SamuelTsao, again, the reason why I really don't like his Druid list is he has less and less of these power spike cards he can hit to get ahead in the mid game. Only 1 Hidden Oasis, which is a decent mid game threat against the Hunter. Obviously the 2 Oasis Surges, but no King Phaeorus as well. He's just missing out, in my opinion, on a lot of the really strong cards.
And here's the next test. This Tiamat is just Divine Shield, Wind Fury every single day of the week.
Absolutely. The most threatening board that che0nsu can put down. And it is, make no mistake, a very threatening board.
Does he really have to go deep with this?
Swipe Wrath.
I think so.
He draws 2 cards. It's not the absolute end of the world, unless there's a Rat Trap. In which case...
At least he doesn't have Wind Fury.
Pretty close to the end of the world. Yeah, fair enough. It's just a vanilla 6/6 that's smacking you in the face.
I've been reminiscing about Wind Fury last day or so. I'm playing a Shaman on Classic WoW. And Wind Fury used to be OP.
What does it do?
It does something very different in current WoW.
Right.
But in old WoW, it basically gave you a chance for extra attacks.
Oh, right, so kind of like Wind Fury.
Yeah, exactly.
Good flavor.
But it was like a proc chance, but what it actually led to was you could potentially just like triple swing someone to death. You kind of you don't literally one shot 'cause it's more than one attack technically, but the Wind Thrower just procs your attacks as well as your actual attacks, and you just kill someone.
Yeah.
It's great. But yes, anyway, back to actual Hearthstone. The Rat Trap was procced. I honestly think SamuelTsao made the right turn.
Yeah. I don't
he
think
couldn't have
he
been
had a
100%
choice.
sure. There was no real read that it would be Rat Trap out of all the Subject 9 offerings that he would play. Maybe it's the most likely one to just dump down.
That's the thing.
But I think it's this or leave up a Siamet and die quicker. I don't know. I think it's going to be bad no matter what happened. But I don't begrudge him that turn at all.
I think from che0nsu now, I would like to see pressure plate because I mean I can obviously see the hand, but that's very, very strong against
But these two
Hidden
cards
Oasis.
are the nuts, right?
These two cards are just
Yeah.
the best ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this was absolutely.
You just have these both, and these just cover the bases.
Yep, Oasis Surger, tick. Hidden Oasis, tick. It would have to be
SamuelTsao, tick,
Yeah.
covered.
It's only Loti plus Starfall that clears this board. It has to be exactly that. And even then the Loti dies.
Which, it's annoying you lost your board, but if your whole opponent's turn is clear the board and do nothing else,
Yep.
then you equip that bow and you punch him in the face. And SamuelTsao kind of just lacking a Nourish again, in my opinion. Not that it was his choice to not draw Nourish, obviously, but I mean, you know, he's even on mana, and look how good his turns could be if he had just a little bit more wiggle room.
Yeah. I don't think SamuelTsao can complain too much. His starting hand was
That was insane.
pretty insane.
And
Crystal
also,
Merchant, Innovate,
che0nsu
Rats,
played
yeah.
into the Starfall.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
SamuelTsao, again, this looks like, haha, misplay order. Nope, because if you play a Hidden Oasis, that 6/6 gets destroyed, which is horrible.
I made that mistake an embarrassing number of times.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Never learn.
Whereas, because I started the expansion on Hunter, as
Oh,
always,
right, yeah.
I saw that happen. I did that to someone else and was like, I am never falling for that as Druid ever, because that is insane.
Speaking of insane, you'll be finding che0nsu wherever the action is, which happens to be directly on top of SamuelTsao's face.
Okay. Won't go anywhere with that. So, is there any reason to not play Dino Tamer? Because Dino Tamer is a card that is very good versus Druid, I think, almost any turn of the game. Obviously, it's just 8 damage, but there's this 6/6 is in the way, so maybe an Unleash the Beast and Bow might be better. Open up the, get rid of the taunt, and then push 12 things.
Yeah.
Because this does the same, except it's just you King Crushes on 2 health. And also you get the bow equipped. I don't know.
I think what che0nsu's come to the conclusion to that this is weak to, again, only and exactly Loti plus Starfall. And to be fair, it's pretty weak to that. That would be a very, very strong turn for SamuelTsao were he to go for that. But given that it would have been very strong last turn as well...
Oh, he would have done it. It would literally be top deck.
Exactly, right. So I think he's got a pretty strong read that it's not there.
I just think whichever way you cut it, you might have ended up with more, or maybe more often ended up with more damage by doing both first.
Maybe.
Push through, and then Bran, because then your King Crush will potentially be on full health, which is then, again, requires quite the effort for SamuelTsao to kill because double Wrath's gone.
It's true. This does, however, put forward an immediate necessary removal. Like, they have to clear off this King Crush on this turn, which maybe limits their mana.
He loses,
Yeah. Like, if you drew Nourish off the top, maybe it would just be too slow to even play that.
Do you remember Spreading Plague, Derek, and how busted it was?
Yes!
Like,
yes.
look at this.
It is seared into my mind.
Yeah. When we're old, and we go out, we all get back together again
Oh, yeah.
for a drink. We'll sit down, and I think one of the first will be like, do you remember Spreading Plague?
Oh,
that
no.
card was insane! And we're all, yeah. Well, now everyone's depressed. We'll see you next time.
Yeah,
Just
when we
leave.
boot up Hearthstone 36, we're like, oh, they don't make cards like they used to anymore.
It's Spreading Plague.
SamuelTsao managing to not have lethal damage represented on board, which, you know, fair play to you.
Put him to 2.
Yeah. Which is as I'm sure you are well aware, as Hunter, as good as Lethal a lot
Pretty
of the
much,
time.
especially after seeing that Hidden Oasis.
The
of
only
which
one
there
in
is
the
only
deck.
one in the deck.
Yeah,
And he's played Ferocious Howl, right? He's played one.
he has. And again, for SamuelTsao, even if we just make a crude comparison, that Elise in hand could be Zephyrus, it means at any point he'd be having a draw to give him an out in this game. Whereas Elise is clearly oriented towards a different style of play. But the problem I have is that I think his list, if it's trying to target Warrior, is not an especially good anti-Warrior list either.
I feel that plays a little bit weird.
I concede.
Well,
I feel like it won the game. Yeah.
It did. My point being, there was one card left in the deck that I think saved SamuelTsao from a hero power, which was Ferocious Hound number 2.
Yeah,
I
or
think it was
Expedition into the...
X. Yeah,
Right,
the heal 5.
I guess it's maybe worth playing around that at that
guess.
point because he's in such a dominant position. But it does either way mean that che0nsu goes up to a 5-1 record, I believe,
Very nice.
in the tournament so far. And it does mean that SamuelTsao goes down to a 2-4 record, definitely a lot lower than what he was hoping to get here so far in the first 3 weeks of Grandmasters. But to be honest, I would say more or less in line with... I think this week he had a pretty strong playstyle. I think he just got unlucky. There wasn't all too much he could have done for the most part. But in previous weeks, I think 2 and 4, if he wants to get higher than that, he's going to have to step up his play.
He really is. And I think for me, my question just goes all the way back to, was the shield and ban correct? If any pros or anyone has a super strong opinion on the shield and ban,
Yeah.
by all means tweet us, because it just interests me to almost no end. Because I look at that Hunter matchup, which looked quite one-sided.
Yep.
I look at, yes, Zoo got banned, but I look at what Zoo could do in many of the matchups. I think Zoo's decent versus Hunter as well, and think, that seems like a good deck. And I look at Druid and go, I don't want to play Druid against any of these decks except exactly Warrior. And I feel like the Shield, if they didn't get the mirror early on,
I
the
agree.
matchup could have really gone crazy. Because I feel like whoever did win that matchup,
Yeah.
because they got a win with the Druid, made their overall chances of winning not only higher because, yes, they went one up, but higher because of the way the rest of the decks lined up. And I think, I don't know, I have a lot of questions about Shield and bans, Derek.
I do too, and I would even argue that che0nsu, despite the fact they made the identical shield and ban, made the better decision because I think his Druid was more likely to win in the mirror, which is very, very slight percentage points, but makes
exists.
me lead towards him a little bit more. He did end up coming away with the victory. But with that aside